Good morning, everyone. My name is Tiago Palaniapan. Let me welcome you on behalf of TriStar to our Thursday webinar. Today's topic is going to be how to edit geometry using flexible modeling extension inside of Creo Parametric. Before I begin, just wanted to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and it will be made available in our YouTube channel as well as in our resource center at tristar.com. Before we begin, just want to let you know about a few of the time-limited offers that we are running this quarter. There's an offer to trade in your existing Creo license to get 3 free Creo extensions. And also on the TriStar training, PTC training, you do have a few time-limited offers on those, including MathCAD, a big deal, a huge deal on the MathCAD side. And also 50% off on the perpetual PTC licensing. As you may be aware, end of December, before end of December, that's the last date where you can have perpetual licensing moving forward. PTC is going to go into a subscription-only model, so there's a time-limited offer on those as well. If you need additional information on these time-limited offers, please visit our website or please reach out to the TriStar reps. So we have done quite a few webinars on how to handle non-Creo files instead of Creo. And today, we wanted to cover, okay, once you import the geometry or even if you have an existing Creo file, how do you edit that geometry, right? As you know, something that's very constant in product design is change. So we need to change whether we have features or whether we don't have features in the model tree of your design. You do have to make a design change. So that's where FMX comes in. So we'll talk about what is FMX, those who are not aware of it. Some of you may be using it already. We'll talk about the capabilities of FMX. I'll show you, I spend most of the time in the presentation, in the demo, just run through a couple of slides to talk about the capabilities, what type of geometry edits are possible as of Creo 4.0. FMX can work not just on non-Creo files like imported geometries like step files, IGES files, or data from other CAD systems, but it can also work on your existing Creo file too, right? So we'll just go through a few use cases where you might be able to benefit from the geometry edits inside of FMX. Starting Creo 4, they also implemented, or FMX is supported in the Sheetmetal mode. So if you get any Sheetmetal parts that was done in a totally different CAD system, or even if it's a step or an IGES, you are able to essentially featureize it inside of Creo Parametric. Currently, all of you are muted, so if you have any questions, feel free to start typing them in the questions area. Towards the end of the demo, I'll try my best to answer as much as I can. So flexible modeling extension is essentially an add-on extension to Creo Parametric. If you already have that license, you should be able to see whenever you open any part file or sheet metal parts in Creo 4, you should be able to see the flexible modeling tab. And that means that you have that license. And it's included in most of the essentials packages, so you may already own it, right? So all it allows you to do is you're not creating features per se. You are going to be editing in this mode, right? It's really rapid editing on your design, right? It could be an imported geometry that doesn't have any model tree. As you can see in the slide here, I have an imported model. All I get is an imported feature. That's it, right? But I want to make a quick change to the existing geometry. I should be able to select the geometry instead of the feature definition that we normally do, right? Normally when you have a Creo file, you do have a feature history and you select the feature and then there's a definition to it and you redefine it or edit definition it, etc. But this one is all about just selecting the geometry, and once you select the geometry, all you're doing is you're making use of some feature recognition tools like pattern recognition, symmetry recognition. You can also use some transformation tools like move, edit. You can use dimensions. Don't think it's just an offset. You can do much more than an offset, actually. So it's quite powerful. So that's why I wanted to just go through some examples to hopefully give you a good idea on what FMX is capable of from a geometry editing standpoint. Now, from a licensing standpoint, please remember I just have a rough one here on some of the essentials packages that you may be owning. Pretty much all the essentials package, whether it's Creo Essentials Plus, Team, or the Premium, they may already include FMX, as you can see, right? Other than the other features that I've removed here, the long list of features that comes with these packages. Just to give you an idea, at the bottom here, you can see the flexible modeling extension is essentially included in pretty much most of the essentials packages. So you may already own it, and you may not be aware of it, right? So, like I said, the best way to know is just if you do see a flexible modeling tab when you open a part file, and that means it is there, right? And it's been there since Creo 1, Creo 2, actually. So, and there has been some continuous improvements all the way to Creo 4 as of now. Okay. So just before I show you some examples, when I say direct editing, some of you may not be aware of it because most of you may have used parametric modeling, like myself, who is very used to looking at a model tree, looking at the feature history, the parameters, the relationships, what have you, right? That's how we drive design intent instead of Creo parametric. Now, what is direct modeling is just the opposite, wherein you don't have history, you don't have features per se, all you see is the geometry, right? You just edit as you go, you create geometry as you go, you really don't go back to some feature and then go edit definition or redefine. You're just making the changes as required. It's much more faster, flexible, so that's direct modeling, right? Some of you may be aware PTC acquired a company called Co-Create several years ago that was primarily direct modeling, and what they thought was, let's make use of best of both worlds, right? And that's flexible modeling, right? Flexible modeling essentially combines the power of parametric modeling that we all know of, as well as the flexibility of quick edits on the direct modeling side. That's kind of what is FMX really, right? For Creo parametric users, you have within Creo, you're not going to another tool. Instead of Creo, you can make a quick and flexible change by selecting the geometry instead of selecting the feature, right? I mean, sometimes you may not even have the feature to select, right? If it's a Creo file, maybe it's a very old file. You don't want it has an outdated design intent, and you would like to still make a change. That's when all these the flexible modeling might be very helpful. So from a capability standpoint, regardless of the complexity of the geometry, you should be able to select geometry quickly, either by drag selecting them or by smart selections like boss, secondary geometry of the boss or the cut. If you select a round, you even have options to select based on rules. You could say, select all the rounds that have the same radius, right? Or all that have the same, all that's convex or concave, etc., right? You can set up a few rules because it's geometry selection. We're not selecting features, right? Once you select that geometry, you get to transform it using a variety of tools. Like you can move simply using draggers, or use dimension move, where you can really use your dimensions, so that can be used in a 2D drawing, for example, later on for that particular edit that you did. Or even using assembly constraints in the part mode, I could select an entire feature, or I should say geometry, and then you can move it to a totally different place. You could either do a copy move or just move the existing one using constraints, right? Or change the radius, change the size, right? All that, there's quite a few tools which I'll show in my demo. Editing rounds and chamfers. You can identify rounds, or you can recognize rounds and patterns, including symmetry. If you have a symmetric model, just select the two geometries that are going to be symmetric, and it will identify the symmetry. So when you make a change in one side, you can allow that symmetry to definition or the recognition to drive the change on the other side, right? So those are really, it's pretty easy to use. Obviously, with the a mini toolbar that we have in Creo 4, or you can use a ribbon. But all these tools, this is pretty much what you do, right? You select the geometry using various tools, and then you start editing them, right? Recognizing them as you as you modify your geometry. If you want, you can go back to your regular Creo environment, right? It's just another tab, and you can just start creating your rounds and drafts as always. But this allows you to change or edit geometry quickly. Okay? Now, what are the use cases here, right? I'm pretty sure you may have come across these use cases in your design process. You may sometimes be asked to make a change at the very end, right? I mean, it's end of the day, you got to get things done quickly, or it's a late-stage design change, right, wherein you cannot afford to spend an hour and a half figuring out how that designer who originally created this model, what type of design intent did he create, right? Maybe he created an accidental parent-child relationship that he should not have done, and that has created so many other unwanted parent-child relationships. So rather than going into the feature tree and the history and looking at the reference viewer and changing, would it be possible to simply quickly make the change you want using FMX, right? That is a use case. And as always with multi-CAD data, right? You may be working with supplier data, or you may have data that's going to be, you may have imported from a different business unit that's using a different CAD system. And once it's inside of Creo, you would like to make a change to that. You don't have the feature tree, obviously, for that particular model, but you can still make a change using FMX, because we don't really care about the source of the CAD file. All we need is geometry, right? That's pretty much it. And the last thing that's quite important too, wherein you might want to de-feature your design for the analysis guys in your company, wherein they may be more willing, they want to do a quick FEA, a structural or thermal simulation on the part. However, they don't like every single detail that the designer has put in that design, right? So how do you simplify it? Normally, you can do a suppress, simplified rep. There are several ways, right? So when you do suppress, for example, there's a good chance that analyst is going to spend quite a lot of time trying to figure out why, when I try to suppress an unwanted feature, my required feature that's going to relieve the stress, it's also getting suppressed, right? Because of the parent-child relationship that is being created during the feature definition. So the workaround would be, obviously, do a save as and, redoing. But FMX is, again, very helpful here, where you're just saying, I want to remove this round. I want to remove these tiny holes. I want to remove these chamfer. That's going to unnecessarily increase my mesh size, for example. So it's also going to be very helpful on the simulation side for downstream use of your design. People, not everybody requires the entire detail. They may want to get rid of some geometry rather than features. That's also, it's very helpful for that, FMX. So really 3 big use cases. And please note that it's not just for imported files, right? You may be just saying, hey, we just do everything in Creo. Even if you were creating everything in Creo, you can make use of these 2 use cases, like late-stage design change, or maybe you want to simplify the design. Here are a few examples wherein, I need to create a duplicate of this detail in here really quickly, right? I know I can go create a datum plane at an angle, create some extrudes, patterns, and all that, or do it as a UDF. There are several ways in the feature definition process, but if I want to make a quick move of this over here, I can just grab geometry, right, without really worrying about the feature definition here, and I can just do a quick move, right, using various options. Here I'm recognizing patterns. I'm recognizing mirror or symmetry here. So when I make a change to one of the ribs, the others updates, etc. Right? And you can even, when you do the move or offset, you've got several controls. You can control the tangency. Do you want to maintain tangency, or do you want to maintain a fixed condition over here when I do that move, etc. Right? So it's pretty powerful from a geometry editing standpoint. And very a common use case that we hear from customers okay, so we do have an Inventor file or a SolidWorks file or a CATIA file or some non-Creo file that was given to you and you need to featureize it. Now, as soon as you import it, let's say it came out fine, or you use the import data adapter to fix the geometry and it came out, you're still seeing only one feature here, right? Maybe I want to create a 2D drawing for this design. Maybe I want the ability to change the whole size, the width of this part, the length of this part, right? I know I can create features using Creo, regular Creo parametric, but I want to make some changes and featureize it, right? Why do we normally look for features? So I can go and edit or edit definition. How about using the move tools to create that dimension? So even though this was done in a totally different CAD system, I'm able to put in those dimensions for me, right? Which I can use to show in a 2D drawing, right? I can make a change using that. Maybe I want to change the whole size. I can do a modify analytic to change that, right? So using these transformation tools instead of FMX, you are creating edit features, but they all can have dimensions as well, right? So that's the beauty about it, right? It works in non-Creo files as well as Creo files. Starting Creo 4, one big thing before I show you the demo, I'll just talk about this a couple of slides here, and then I'll spend the rest of the time in the demo, is the support for Sheetmetal in FMX, or starting Creo 4.0, when you are in Sheetmetal environment, flexible modeling is available. Until Creo 3, it used to be grayed out, right? It was available only in part mode. So now what you could do is you could have an imported file or a file that's already done in Creo. It doesn't matter, right? You should be able to, again, do some shape selections like I showed you earlier, or we talked about earlier. You could also have some very Sheetmetal specific objects. So you can say, I want you to identify all the bend reliefs, all the bends in the Sheetmetal design that is a stepper and edges. I want to use a pull wall command, or I want to edit the relief. So even though the relief itself was not created inside of Creo, it's able to identify it. You're essentially featureizing it, right? And then, as always with patterns, symmetry, you can do move, and I'll show you some examples, but this is a major enhancement done in Creo 4.0. So here are some examples. As you can see, this Sheetmetal part need not have done in Creo, but it could be a stepper and edges or some other CAD system. But once I bring it inside of Creo, I'm using the pull wall command, and when I use a pull wall command, as you can see, it still maintains the seam, the relief, the corner relief there, right? I can transform the wall. It'll identify the bend when I transform the wall, right, etc. So let me let's take a look at all these really quickly here. So I'm using Creo 4.0. Let's see if I could quickly show you some files here. There it goes. Okay. So I have a geometry. I selected the geometry of the hole. I want to change the whole size of this design. But as you can see, I don't have a feature tree. I cannot do an edit or an edit definition, right? I can go to Flexible Modeling tab. Again, you can always go and customize your ribbon and ensure that the flexible modeling is checked. If you do have the license, it should come up automatically, but you can always double check that in your ribbon tab, but that's flexible modeling, right? So really pretty straightforward. Is all you have is shape selection tools, some searching. You can do some geometry search, right, based on some criteria, and then all you're doing is transforming them, editing around. These are the editing tools, recognition tools, and attach and remove. So that's pretty much it, right? That's what you would. So we are really not creating anything inside of FMX. It's very important to understand that we are editing, right? Editing the geometry. So I select the geometry here, and insert this as always. Creo 4, the mini toolbar, one of my favorites, right? I can even go to a full screen mode here and start working on that. So I want to edit this. I know it's not a feature definition. I should still be able to hit modify analytic. And when I do modify analytic, it identifies the dimension, right? And I can change the radius right there, right? I'm able to identify that. Okay, and I can make a change, right? That's one thing. Similar to that, so that's this modify analytic, right? It works on spherical surfaces. It works on curved surfaces, right? So if you have a torus, for example, you should be able to do a modify analytic, and it may give you 2 dimensions that you should be able to change, right? You should be able to change the radius. So I should be able to go here, for example, and I could just say, hey, let's change the radius right there, right? I want to change the radius of that feature right there. I changed it. Even though that round was not done in Creo Parametric, I changed it, right? So those are the things, types of edits where you are using dimensions to do the change. Now, let's say I also can do a few more things, like, for example, let's see here. If I want to get into, let's see, yeah, this particular design right here, it looks, yeah, maybe this one here. I would like to select this geometry. At the same time, I also want to select this geometry here, and I can do a move. Now, when I do a move, it is automatically identifying the rounds, as you can see. It found out some rounds in there, and as I'm editing, as you can see here, I'm able to edit, give an offset, right? I can do that change in quick time here, do a little preview there. It looks good, and get out of that. So I'm able to make changes. I can also remove geometry and also apply dimensions to them. So for example, these surfaces that I want to select, I know I can quickly simply do an offset or do a move, but when I do a move, normally you are interested to select a height dimension, and you might want to make a change to that. Now, I should be able to do that too, so where I can just say, let's go move by dimension. So really, when you move, you may, normally the default is using dragger, right? I mean, you get those 6 degrees, right? Translation, rotation, freedom, and you can just drag it. But as you all know, in the real world, from a manufacturing standpoint, you want to have a dimension, right? Unless it's a real concept design where you're trying some concepting and simply you want to just drag it. Most of the time, you might be using move by dimension or move using constraints. So if I were to go with move by dimension, I can say I would like to dimension this to, for example, maybe the surface. So I've essentially created, I've featureized it, right, so to speak. So I should be able to go, let's change the dimension there, right? I should be able to add, so as I'm doing all this, if you look at my tree, right, if you look at my model tree, I do have a move command, and if I edit in the 2D drawing, when I create a drawing for this guy, I should be able to use this dimension to drive that, change that height, right? I know it's not parametrically driven. For example, the hole didn't move when I moved that, right? You could go and select that geometry additionally, or you could go say, I would like to transform this, for example, right? I want to just select that cut, right, for example, and I would like to do a move on that one by dimension. You could absolutely do that, and you'd say, okay, I want to add a dimension between that guy and this one, and look at that, it created a dimension from that surface. So you're essentially featureizing it as required. Now, what about the linear dimension in the other direction? I could always add a second dimension and say, how about from here to here? So really, now the question is, why would you need a feature, right? I mean, you could change. So I understand that I don't have a feature called hole here to do my edit or edit definition, but I do have the move, which allows me to really dimension, right? I could just say, okay, these are my linear dimensions, right? These are my X and Y dimensions for the hole. And if I want to change the hole itself, the diameter of the hole itself, I can always do my modify analytic anytime, right? I know it gives a radius, but again, you do have the dimension to change that. So it's not just about, dragging things and moving it around for concepting or for industrial designers. Many customers I've seen, they think of FMX as, okay, let's just push and pull, but it's much more than that. It's my opinion, at least, where you start to think, why are we doing features sometimes when you do have all these tools, right? I mean, There's still parametric modeling is still good for propagating design intent, but situations like this where you may want to make a change after the fact, regardless of whether you have features or not, there are some very good tools. Similar to this, I could also say, hey, maybe I want to send for whatever reason I didn't want that geometry to be there. I could just say, hey, fill that for me. So what I just did was removed. I can remove features, right? I don't have to worry about parent-child relationships. So for example, if I were to just open up another design really quickly here. So I have another part. Now, this is not an imported file. As you can see, this is fully featured. It's a typical Creo file, as you can imagine. A lot of features. I can always do my favorite edit or edit definition and all that. But in this particular design, I don't want this feature here, right? This geometry, this cut that it's highlighting right there. Let's say I want to delete that, right? Or even suppress that for now. Look at that, right? Now this is like welcome to the world of parametric modeling, right? Nothing wrong in it, but the way somebody built that, right? Wherein when I'm trying to get rid of that feature or suppress that feature, there's like a huge list in here. So this is the one I was talking about, right? I want to make a late state design change, or I want to remove that feature, but I'm in a rush to get things done. It's like close to 5 o'clock in the evening. I know I'm very, you may be a very good Creo user where you can go back, edit definition, get rid of all these parent-child relationships, etc. But would you want to spend that time, or could we just go back to flexible modeling? So again, there's a Creo file. I could go to flexible modeling, select that geometry, right? And it has some smart selection tools, like it can select secondary bosses, secondary geometry. You can even select a cut. You see how it picked up the geometry there, right? Once it picked up the geometry, I should be able to simply hit remove. Now, when I hit remove, what it's doing is it's looking at geometry only. It doesn't care about your parent-child relationship. It's essentially getting this geometry over, it's extending the geometry, and it's filled it for me, right? So again, if you were to make the same change that I just showed you in Creo Parametric, you may be a very expert Creo user, you may be using it for several years, or you may be a new user, it doesn't matter. You still have to spend some time through that feature definition, right? So that's what I'm getting at with quick edits. When I say late state design change or defeaturing, this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Where I don't have to deal with my parent-child relationships in Creo. I'm just using the geometry. That's pretty much it. Let me undo this real quick. I could also do some basic changes, obviously. So for example, if I want to just move that, when I hit move, immediately allows me to move, as you can see, the geometry. As you can see, I can move. Or maybe I want to angle it. I could just put my dragger somewhere on the edge, and I can even say, okay, whoever added the draft, let's assume it was a drafted surface and it was an imported file. You can go and modify the draft or edit the draft as required, right? You can make the change in there, right? You could just say, so I want to select. So the thing is, you're just selecting geometry, and when you hit move, the beauty is how it identifies. So whenever it highlights these green surfaces, it identifies rounds. So whether you did it in Creo or not, it identifies that, allowing you to move or drag along that direction there. Another quick example here is, again, a Creo file. It could be imported, or let's say, as you can see, I have quite a lot of, I have like an external inheritance feature. It is inherited from some other component, and a lot of features done on top of it, right? So something like this, maybe I might just want to go to flexible modeling and say, let's select these features really quickly. I'm just selecting some of the inside geometries there. I collected the geometry and I want to move, right? When I move, again, I'm going to use my dimensions, and I could say I want a dimension from here to here, and I'm able to just drag that over, right? So you may not have the actual feature edit for whatever reason, right? Where it was a copy geom feature, or whether it was an imported file done in different CAD system, right? It doesn't matter, right? We are really not looking at the feature definition, right? We are looking at only the geometry, right? That's really what we're doing when we work in an FMX. Geometry is the only thing that we're looking at, right? Now, when I did this change, though, let me go back to that. Is that a feature that I can redefine? Absolutely. That's a move feature. I would have liked, when I moved that, I would have liked these geometries to also come along. You should always be able to do that too, right? You can go back to your surfaces, right? And I can just say, right now it's selected all the surfaces there, but I can add to it, right? I should be able to use my normal seed and boundary thing, right, that you normally do in Creo, right? I'm sure many of you may know about that, but I want to select that seed, and then I want to do my boundary surfaces as this and this one. So what I really got is I got that the highlighted orange preview geometry. So you still have the power of Creo parametric selection tools. You see your seed and boundary, your tangent surfaces, all that is still there. You're combining that with flexible modeling. That's really what you're doing. There it goes, right? So it's not that, so this is what you would expect when you do a parametric change, right? When you change this, I want something else to move. Here, all you're doing is you're selecting geometry that should move along. You can also do some rule-based selections. When I say rule-based, you could say you can have some criteria, right? I know I could just do a drag select a bunch of items, right? You can drag select geometry, right? All I'm doing is geometry. Because as you can see, the filter is set to region and surfaces, but what I could do is when I select, instead of selecting after selecting one geometry, I should be able to use this these tools like geometry rules and say, hey, pick up everything that's equal radius, or pick up with the same convexity, that has the same convexity, concave or convex. Right? Pick up everything that's coaxial. So imagine a very complex model. These could be really beneficial, right? So I'm selecting equal radius, all of them equal radius. I got that geometry, and let's say for whatever reason I want to remove them, right? So maybe I'm going to send it for some stress analysis for the analyst. I really don't care about every single detail in there, and I just hit remove. And what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to remove all that geometry that it picked. So selection tools also are pretty smart, right? I could just select this, but I could say, hey, either give me the boss. See, that's what it's picking, the outer rim. But if I say with secondary, it picked up even these geometry, right? And I should be able to hit, oh, let's just remove that, right? Similarly, I should be able to go up here and say, maybe I want to get this, select the secondary geometry, maybe remove that too. There it goes, right? So, and so on, right? So you can see the things that, that FMX is capable of. Let me just open up a few more examples. So here I'm opening an NX part. So you could see, Unigraphics, NX as they call it now, right? It could be SolidWorks, NX, Inventor, it doesn't matter, right? So let's say this is something that my partner has sent, or, somebody using a different CAD system has sent it to me, right? I can either import it as a step arising, or with the Unite technology, as you know, you can directly get it, and I don't get the feature history, right? This is where I could go to flexible modeling, and I should be able to identify patterns, right? So this could be a pattern inside of NX, but in Creo, it doesn't identify that yet, as of yet. So that's what we're going to do now. So I can, again, I have quick selection tools in here. I can go say select the cut, so when I select the cut, right, I could also select additional geometry here. I could just say, hey, select all the secondary geometry, and I can simply say identify the pattern. And what it's doing right now, it's essentially, it has picked up all the geometry that I selected, and it has picked up the pattern, right? There it goes. So now I have a pattern recognition. Now, can I edit that, right? So it even allows you to edit the pattern. So I should be able to go to the pattern, and let's say, for example, we'll just try something here. I just want to have 6 of them at 6-degree spacing instead, right? And allow it to regenerate it. So you got like pattern recognition, symmetry recognition. You can identify rounds and chamfers, and there it goes, right? And when I make a change to this, right, again, the same thing. I could select this, right? Let's say I selected that geometry. I would like to make a change to this. I'm going to move this, right? So I'm going to say I can use dragger. Now, as soon as I show my intent to change, so far it is just feature recognition. It's still an NX part, right? NX also has .prt extension, right? It's still a non-Creo file, right? That I'm trying to, that I've recognized the pattern, that's all. Now it's asking me that I have to make a change. I have to convert it. So once I convert it, that's a warning it gave me, right? When I'm about to make a change to this feature, I don't have to do it individually, right? I could just make use of any change that I might make on this geometry. I could just say, make sure to use the pattern recognition, meaning any change that I'm going to do right now, it will ensure to pick all the other geometry also, right? So you can make changes, you can do offsets. So for example, if I were to even select one geometry and do a move, right? As you can see, the move is showing up somewhere here. I might want to put that dragger right on the axis, and I might want to give an angle, a larger angle, for example, right? You see, we did a stress analysis, and we found out that it should be a wider, or, it was over-designed, things like that. I'm making a real design change here, but at that time, I should be able to go pattern, and I can even select the pattern recognition. So it can be applied to the rest of the geometry for the pattern recognition, right? You see how it is can apply to all of them. So just a few tools, some basic tools in here. Now, a few more things on Creo in FMX is the ability to identify symmetry, for example, or even remove, like something like this, right? I say there's another example here. I should be able to go to flexible modeling and just select the geometry, as you can see here. And when I do the move, I can do the move dragger, and let's say, for example, I just wanted to roughly place it somewhere here, right? So as you can see, when I'm dragging the geometry, you see how this itself tells you it's not feature definition, right? It is geometry, right? It's really going through the geometry attachment, right? I could just put it somewhere up here, for example. Let's see if I could just drag it. I can always use the dragger, or I can use the dimensions or constraints. Maybe drag it over here a little bit, right? I should even be able to just rotate this. Just wanted to make sure that it can even work on a geometry like that, right? And something like this, right, for example. Let's say, so now I know that this could have been a move, or maybe in some cases you might just want to duplicate it quickly but still keep the original, right? I just can say, yeah, keep it as a copy. There it goes, right? Now, what about the actual dimensions, though, right? So for this one, for example, if I go edit that, there's a 1.3 dimension. Let's say I want to make it larger in diameter. It's essentially updating both. So please remember, you're using the power of parametric modeling and the flexibility of FMX or direct modeling in here, all in one shot. So maybe this one here, I might have a pattern dimension that we do in Creo, right? There's my pattern. So maybe I want to give 5 of them instead, right? I'm giving a lot more number of features. And yeah, I think it did update right there, but it's, or maybe even go back to edit definition of that extrude and say, hey, instead of this extrude, I'd like to have this extrude. And that's the thing is you still have your feature definition intact, but your geometry that you copied or moved will update because there's dependency based off of that, right? So you still have your power of direct parametric modeling is my point. Coming to this one here, so if I were to go and identify, for example, a pattern on this one, right? So let's say I want to select a cut geometry first and identify the pattern that it goes, right? I've identified the pattern, and I should be able to edit the pattern, or right now it's just right. Let's say the pattern be there, but something like this, I should be able to select the boss, for example. I can even do multiple selections on here, and maybe remove that quickly. I can go back to my pattern recognition that I did, and I should be able to even edit that. Right, I could go and say, hey, just allow the edit. Maybe we want at a different spacing, something like that. And these two could be mirror geometry, so I can just select these two and say, identify symmetric geometry, and now they will be symmetric. There will be a symmetry recognition. So if I make a change to one of them, right, if I just say, let's just do a move on this, rather than dragging just one. Right now, if I drag one, it's dragging only this, right? I should be able to say, let's use symmetry recognition and select that symmetry recognition, and it identifies that symmetry recognition there, and you should be able to make changes dependently on both sides there. Or maybe change the radius. I want to have this, but I want to search I want to use my geometry rules and see which are the rounds that have equal radius. Looks like all of them have equal radius, right? I want to select all of them, and I might want to edit the round. So when I edit the round again, right, what is the value right here? So I could just make it increase it or decrease it, or maybe slightly. Let's see if I can increase it a little bit, leave it here. And it is updated on all of them, right? Because I just picked them in one shot right there, right? It's updated on all of them. So you have editing tools. You can even recognize them if it didn't recognize. For example, if I could go to a design like this, right? I'm trying to do an offset on this, right? Let's say I want to move this. I move this. When I move this, something that shouldn't happen is happening, right? You see the chamfer. There is a very small value that's getting extended. The reason is it's not identifying that bevel surface as a chamfer. So what I'm going to do is identify that as a chamfer first. So I could just go recognize chamfers. There it goes. It's giving me some information, right? It's recognized it, the size, etc., the O1, O2 dimension, everything. Now I should be able to go and do the move. When I do the move now, as you can see, it keeps that chamfer, right? Again, I do have the option, quite a few options to say don't use round or chamfer geometry. I can create it later on, but some really nice tools there. And lastly, the sheet metal side of things. If you have sheet metal parts, right? This is a sheet metal part, as you can see. Sheet metal part, and within sheet metal part, I do have the flexible modeling with a design objects tree, so it can identify bends, bend reliefs, corner seams, etc. Right? It has done that for me. So here, in a design like this, maybe I might want to, for example, I didn't want these geometries, or so let's say I want to collect some geometry here. I should be able to even, let's see if I can delete that, remove that geometry just like that. I've removed it. Or identify, same thing, I can select these form features. Even make changes like, for example, something like this. If I were to move this, right, I just still have the same move command, just you have with the regular ones. I move this over, or maybe when I move this, I might want to put that dragger on the edge and maybe have an angle there. And so I'm creating dimensions as I do all this. Or I should be able to even select, I can just use the pull command, or maybe in here, for example, right? Should be able to select the cut geometry, and when I do the move, maybe I want to move along this edge. I want to put that on the edge, and as you can see, I'm moving it. Or again, I can use the rules, right? I should be able to go say, look for coplanar surfaces. There it is. It picked up the coplanar surfaces there. Now I would like to do a move this edge, right? As I'm moving along this edge, you see it has identified that round. So it's geometry edits, simple, just basic geometry edits. I should be able to change. So all these are design objects, right? I can just go edit relief, for example. I can go edit bend relief, and I could convert it into an ob round. I should be able to go to rectangular relief. So it doesn't matter, again, if the sheet metal part is done in Creo or not, you do have that options. Or maybe I want to pull the wall. When I pull this wall, you see how it's still keeping the seam, the corner relief, whatever you had defined, right? It's really not doing an offset. It's identifying those geometries. So same thing here. If I were to select these surfaces and then do a pull wall, as you can see, it is still moving all the other geometry along with it, right? And I can, of course, move, and I can, after doing all this, I should still be able to go back and do an unbend, or my flat pattern for my, I should still be able to do that. Right, the bend notes here. There it goes. And even at this point of time, if I go to, let's see here, top view or something like that, I should be able to select geometry and do a move, right? I can just put it right on this, and I should be able to do the move. Sometimes when you do a move like this, let's say you're collecting geometry, right? You collected geometry and you just said, hey, I want to move this. And let's say we'll put it on this one, and you're trying to move it. Look at the solution that it gave, right? You could always say, hey, let's give me the next solution. So it's pretty nice how the system is trying to give you the different topology options that's possible, right? It's giving you, would you want with this? Do you want with this? Or, so that's probably what I want, right? When I select these geometries. So pretty powerful editing tools in the sheet metal mode as well. And if you had a completely imported geometry, right here I have a model there where then all I did was I imported the step or edges. I did not do anything else on it, as you can see. I converted to a sheet metal part, but that's it. Nothing is identified, right? So this is where I can go to flexible modeling. I could say, look for sheet metal objects. So pretty powerful. All these are kind of new in Creo 4, where I could say recognize all the bends for me. And I can either do it manually, or I could just say automatic, and it has recognized all the bends in the sheet metal part, even though this was designed in a completely different CAD system. 10 different bends are found. So if I hover over it, I have that. I should be able to edit the bend now. See, I can edit the inside bend radius, the bend angle, everything, right? So you can see how we are essentially featureizing it. You see, it has created a design object tree with those, right? It has identified those. Similarly, I could say look for bend reliefs, automatic, and it has found these bend reliefs, right? About 4 of them. There it goes. Similarly, I could say I would like to go recognize corner reliefs, and there it goes. It has identified these corner reliefs as well, right? If I go automatic, one corner, one V notch, it says. So these are huge improvements compared to the Creo 3-way, where converting a non-Sheetmetal, a non-Creo file that's a Sheetmetal part into Creo and then flattening it so that is a big process, right? Doing it in the non-Sheetmetal mode and then converting it, doing offsets, what have you. But this is huge, right? It has identified the theme here. Again, I'm going to just set it to automatic. I can also recognize forms, right? You can either do all forms, or I could even say this one should be, it's just 3 forms here, so I should be able to just do my drag select and then say identify or recognize the forms. There it goes. So now if I go to those identified objects, right, I do have a filter for Sheetmetal items. It tells me, see, the width and the depth, that's a bend relief. It tells me information about that bend. This is very important, right? When I go and, you're essentially looking at, you get the information tools. It'll say what type of corner relief it is. Right there, it's a V notch, right? And you can change to that. So, and of course, you can do the pull wall. So some very specific Sheetmetal options are there now. Okay, so you should be able to select the form. I should be able to move the form, for example, using all the tools, right? Maybe just drag that over, or I should be able to even remove it, right? The move is just taking a little more time. Just stop that here for now. I can even go and remove that. Maybe even remove all of them, right? Before I do my flat state set. Okay, so I think with that we might have some time for questions here. So let's see if we have any questions. Hopefully that was an overview, a good overview for you guys, just to see the capabilities of FMX. If you have any questions, please type in the questions or the chat area. Okay, looks like there are no questions. Again, just a reminder on the time-limited offers for this quarter, which we are running through end of December. If you want to know more information about these, please reach out to the reps at TriStar or just visit tristar.com. Here are some useful links, the webinar recordings, all our webinar recordings on both Creo as well as Windchill PDM Link, on the Windchill apps, on the PLM side. Everything is available in our resource center. It's also available in our YouTube channel. And the Learning Exchange has a lot of good tutorials. As always, the PTC knowledge base is something we encourage all our customers to take advantage of when it comes to any type of errors, issues, or how-to techniques. It's all there. Okay. Looks like we might have one question. Okay, what are the licenses that have the FMX option? Okay, so I thought I had a slide. So pretty much all the essentials packages. So if I could go back here, So the Creo Essentials, Essentials Plus, Team, Premium, right, as you can see in the slide, the FMX is included. So if you just have a Creo license, it's not in there. What PTC is doing, at least recently, if you had purchased an Essentials package, it should be part of that, right? Essentials has FMX, right? All these Essentials. But if you have an old one, then the flexible modeling extension should be an add-on. So some companies I've seen they may have a few Essentials, so you might want to make sure you let your CAD admin know to configure that for you so that you can take advantage of that, right? So, but yeah, these are the packages that includes FMX. Okay, so these are some useful links that might help you. The recordings, and this recording, the recording of this webinar should also be made available hopefully by sometime tomorrow in our YouTube channel and in our resource center. Okay, so thanks to all of you for your time. You all have a great rest of the day and a great weekend and a great holiday week next week. Looking forward to seeing you all in another webinar soon. Thanks.